So this is a guide to staying together in social isolation. We sent this out. I just wanted to highlight a couple of key things in this that I think are really helpful right now. And some of the stuff is taking shape even more as days go on. We're able to clarify and kind of work out some of the kinks of some of these things. So this first page is just honestly casting a little bit of vision that with this significant shift, we're poised for a potential spiritual renewal. And I really believe that. I believe that God's inviting us into a season of radical heart-level transformation. I think one of the key practices to experiencing him in this season is going to be showing up and committing to community together. And that's challenging. It's difficult. So that's why we have this guide. It's just trying to carve out some simple pathways, some simple commitments to kind of take this big idea of staying committed in community down to the smallest level possible. So simplest level possible. So we've got general guidance, stay in touch. We'll continue to produce discussion guides. These discussion guides, you don't have to use. They can be used for discussion in your micro groups, which we'll talk about more in a minute. They can be used for discussion in larger groups. They can just be used for your own personal time of reflection. Our commitment to you is that they're going to keep coming out so that you have some tool to use as you lead your group and as you lead yourself and your family. So stay connected to the GCC family at large. Like guys, if you're not already on our newsletter, I hope you are by now. That's a vital resource. gospelcc.org/resources. We're constantly updating that page, not with content for the sake of it, but with resources directed specifically at practicing community, staying in the scriptures, staying in prayer, staying connected to Jesus, to one another, and to Jesus' mission during this season. This page right here, this is kind of what I wanted to double click on, sort of hone in on. Microgroups, what are these? Casting a clear vision, clear expectations, kind of setting the culture for what these groups are. This is pretty simple. It answers it over here. It's a group of 3 to 4 people of the same gender, ideally intergenerational. That's what we're aiming for here, who meet at least weekly. So this is a separate meeting outside of your small group. It can be just a phone call. It can be FaceTime. It can be Zoom call. It can be whatever. It is virtual, so we're not recommending in person according to the governor's recommendations. Really, the law that's been commended to us at this point is to practice social isolation. This is a guide, not for in-person community, but in social isolation. So you're meeting weekly virtually to pray. There's 3 things: pray, discuss and apply the scriptures, and share life together. So in 3 words, scripture, prayer, and community. Those are the 3 rhythms. Read scripture, share life together, and pray. Scripture, share life together, and prayer. And so when we talk about scripture, you could read scripture together in your group. You could use the discussion guide to rehash the sermon that came out that week. You could, during this season, we're going to produce different scripture reading guides. You can discuss the scriptures you've been reading in your own time. You can just open up the Bible, read a psalm together. But you're reading and discussing and applying scripture, and you're sharing life together. You're discussing the good fruit, bad fruit, hard things of life together. That's one of the things you do in your microgroups. This is one way that we care for each other in this season. Then you pray. Having shared scripture, having shared life, pray earnestly and honestly with and for one another, neighbors, church, and your family. And so that's it. That's what a D group is. You meet weekly. It's a small group of a few guys, a few girls, a few men, a few women, and you're reading scripture, you're practicing the discipline of community, and you're praying with one another. So if you need resources, if you need help getting these things done, let us know. There's going to need to be some sort of point leader that's established at some point just to coordinate, make sure these meetings are happening. That's super important. We've got tools. You should know this by now, but if you haven't figured out a good way to do virtual meetings, this is a tool for you to consider your options. And then some best practices. This is etiquette for doing large group, especially meetings. It's really difficult to get 25 faces up on a Zoom call and really chat in a meaningful way. It's difficult to do. So some of these best practices are helpful for that. This is not a world that I was familiar with, but for those who have worked from home or worked remotely, video conferencing is normal for you. You can definitely agree with all of this. One key thing that you want to pay attention to: scheduling. Schedule your meetings, send them out ahead of time, remind people that they're happening, send reminders, consider GroupMe if you don't already have a good text messaging platform. GroupMe is a great one. And consider how you can care for one another and for the needs in our church as a group. And if you want to get in touch with the needs that we have in our church, you can email Lindsay at gospelcc.org and she can help connect you to the different care opportunities in the life of our church. And this is ways to serve one another, to practice the one another's. I just want to read this. Let me give you a new command, Jesus says. Love one another. In the same way that I've loved you, love one another. This is how everyone's going to recognize that you are my disciples, when they see the love you have for one another. That's what we're doing with these microgroups, with staying connected in this time of social isolation, is practicing the command of Jesus that summarizes the law and the prophets. Love God, love each other in this season. And I genuinely believe that God is going to meet us in a unique way. It's going to be painful. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to certainly be unlike anything we expected, but I believe God's going to meet us, renew us, restore us, revive us in this season. So love you. Thanks for paying attention. Thanks for hanging on this long. And thank you for leading. If you have any questions, reach out to your coach, reach out to me. We're longing for as much feedback as we can get to see how you're leading and see how we can support what Jesus is doing in and through you and our church. So love you. We'll talk to you soon.